The wrench had barely slipped from his hand when security marched across the spotless factory floor, and every worker froze in stunned silence. A little girl standing near the visitor's window watched her father lose his job because he had saved a race engine from exploding. The CEO pointed toward the exit without a second glance, convinced an ordinary mechanic had no right to touch a championship prototype. What no one in that enormous building realized was that the man they were humiliating had quietly designed, built, and perfected nearly every winning race car that had made the company famous. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances still matter in this world, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community, every person inside Hawthorne. Performance Motors knew Rowan Mercer as the quiet maintenance technician who fixed broken equipment before sunrise and disappeared into the background before executives arrived. He never demanded recognition, never corrected anyone who underestimated him, and never spoke about the years he had spent creating championship-winning racing machines. His only priority was raising his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, after losing his wife to a sudden illness 4 years earlier. Life had become a careful balance of school lunches, overtime shifts, unpaid medical bills, and bedtime promises that tomorrow would somehow be better. Hazel never complained about the small apartment or the second-hand clothes. She simply believed her father could fix anything, because somehow he always did. The company itself had changed dramatically over the years. Once led by passionate engineers who valued experience, Hawthorne Performance Motors had recently been taken over by ambitious young CEO Preston Calloway. Preston believed modern branding, flashy presentations, and aggressive investors mattered more than the old traditions that had built the company's reputation. He admired expensive suits more than grease-stained hands and often dismissed veteran employees as outdated. To him, innovation belonged in conference rooms rather than workshops. That particular morning the engineering department gathered around a revolutionary race engine that was scheduled for an international demonstration later that afternoon. Investors, journalists, and sponsors would soon arrive to witness the company's greatest achievement. Engineers celebrated while photographers prepared promotional material. Everyone believed success was guaranteed. Rowan happened to be replacing a damaged air compressor nearby when a faint metallic vibration reached his ears. It was almost impossible for anyone else to notice, but decades of experience had trained him to recognize mechanical danger before disaster struck. The vibration repeated itself only once, followed by an almost invisible change in engine rhythm. Rowan's expression immediately changed. Without hesitation, he crossed the safety barrier and shut the engine down before anyone could stop him. Engineers shouted in disbelief. Preston stormed across the floor, furious that a maintenance worker had interrupted the demonstration. As technicians reopened the engine, the entire room fell silent. A tiny manufacturing defect inside one critical component had already begun damaging the crankshaft. Another few minutes at full speed would have destroyed the prototype completely, possibly injuring everyone standing nearby. Instead of gratitude, Preston saw embarrassment. Investors were arriving within hours, and he believed Rowan had undermined executive authority by acting without permission. Ignoring the evidence sitting on the workbench, Preston declared that discipline mattered more than excuses. Before hundreds of stunned employees, he fired Rowan immediately for violating company protocol. Hazel had come to surprise her father after school with a handmade drawing of a race car covered in bright crayons. She arrived just in time to watch security escort him toward the front entrance carrying a small cardboard box filled with personal belongings. Her smile disappeared as she ran into his arms, confused by the tears she had never seen him struggle to hide. Rowan refused to speak bitterly about what had happened. He simply held his daughter close and assured her that losing a job never meant losing dignity. They walked away from the factory under the warm afternoon sun with nothing except courage and each other. The following weeks became painfully difficult. Bills piled higher. Savings disappeared faster than expected. Rowan repaired neighbors' vehicles inside a borrowed garage while Hazel quietly helped organize tools after finishing her homework. Some customers could only afford homemade pies or fresh vegetables instead of cash, and Rowan accepted every payment with genuine appreciation because he understood that kindness often arrived in unexpected forms. Despite everything, he never criticized Hawthorne Performance Motors. Whenever friends urged him to expose the company publicly, Rowan gently declined. He believed revenge could never build the future his daughter deserved. Unknown to almost everyone, Rowan carried another secret. 20 years earlier, before family responsibilities had changed his priorities, he had been one of the most respected race car engineers in the industry. Many of Hawthorne's greatest championship victories had been achieved using designs he personally created. But after his wife became seriously ill, Rowan stepped away from leadership, requesting an anonymous technical position that allowed flexible hours for caregiving. Ownership eventually changed, records became buried beneath corporate restructuring, and newer executives never bothered learning who had built the company's greatest legacy. Meanwhile, Hawthorne's problems multiplied. The repaired prototype continued experiencing mysterious failures no engineering team could solve. Every adjustment created another unexpected weakness. Test laps ended with overheated engines, unstable handling, and shattered confidence. Sponsors grew impatient. Investors questioned management. Competitors announced groundbreaking technology that threatened Hawthorne's future. Preston blamed everyone except himself. Meetings became longer. Pressure increased. Experienced employees quietly retired or resigned. Morale collapsed across every department. One afternoon, an elderly retired founder named Graham Hawthorne visited the headquarters after hearing troubling reports about the company. Walking through faded photographs displayed along the executive hallway, he noticed something astonishing. Nearly every championship car featured one familiar face standing modestly near the back of each celebration picture. It was Rowan. Graham immediately demanded Rowan's employment records. Hours later, he entered the archives where forgotten design journals, engineering notebooks, and handwritten calculations filled dusty storage shelves. Every revolutionary suspension system, every championship chassis, every record-breaking aerodynamic breakthrough carried Rowan's careful signature. The realization struck Graham with overwhelming regret. The company had not fired an ordinary mechanic, that IT had fired the mind responsible for its greatest achievements. Preston stared silently at document after document as his confidence slowly crumbled. Every award he proudly displayed in the executive lobby had been earned using innovations Rowan had quietly developed years before. The maintenance worker he had publicly humiliated was, in truth, the foundation upon which the company's reputation had been built. Ashamed beyond words, Preston drove himself to the small neighborhood garage where Rowan now worked beneath an old metal roof while Hazel sorted bolts into carefully labeled containers. The contrast was impossible to ignore. There were no polished marble floors or expensive executive offices. There was only honest work, laughter shared between father and daughter, and customers waiting patiently because they trusted Rowan completely. For the first time in years, Preston truly listened instead of speaking. That he watched Rowan patiently explain simple engine repairs to a teenage apprentice, encouraging mistakes as opportunities to learn rather than reasons for humiliation. He saw elderly customers greeted by name and struggling families quietly charged less than the actual cost whenever Rowan sensed they needed help. Success, Preston realized, was measured differently here. When Rowan finally noticed him, there was no anger in his face, only quiet surprise. Preston admitted every mistake without searching for excuses. He confessed that pride had blinded him. He acknowledged that titles had made him overlook wisdom. Most importantly, he apologized for humiliating Rowan in front of his daughter. Hazel stood nearby listening carefully. She squeezed her father's hand, waiting to see what forgiveness looked like. Rowan remained silent for several moments before explaining that losing his position had hurt, but watching Hazel witness that humiliation had hurt far more. Children remembered moments adults often forgot. The greatest responsibility any leader carried was protecting the dignity of those who trusted them. Those words struck Preston harder than any public criticism ever could. Instead of demanding his old position back, Rowan made one unexpected request. If he returned, every employee from janitors to senior engineers would be treated with equal respect. Ideas would be judged by merit rather than job titles. Apprentices would receive mentorship instead of ridicule. Experience would once again matter. Preston agreed without hesitation, returning to Hawthorne Performance Motors felt very different from leaving it. This time employees lined the entrance applauding the man many had quietly admired for years. Mechanics wiped away tears. Engineers lowered their heads in respect. Even office staff who barely knew Rowan understood they were witnessing something far greater than one employee returning to work. They were watching integrity reclaim its rightful place. Rowan accepted the applause with his usual humility before walking directly into the engineering department. Within days he identified design flaws everyone else had overlooked. Instead of taking personal credit, he invited young engineers to solve problems alongside him. Confidence slowly returned. Innovation flourished. Departments began cooperating instead of competing. Months later the redesigned race car entered its first championship. Under bright afternoon sunlight, thousands of spectators watched as the sleek machine crossed the finish line in first place, breaking a track record that experts had believed impossible. Television cameras searched for executives celebrating victory. Instead they found Rowan standing quietly beside Hazel, smiling more proudly at her excitement than at another trophy. When reporters asked him how it felt to reclaim recognition after years of anonymity, Rowan answered with remarkable simplicity. He explained that trophies eventually collected dust, but the people we lifted along the journey carried those moments forever. Real success was never about proving others wrong. It was about helping others become better than they believed possible. Preston never forgot that lesson. That he transformed the company culture completely. Employee suggestions became valued regardless of position. Training programs expanded. Veteran workers mentored younger generations. The maintenance department gained the same respect as executive offices. Every new employee heard the story of the mechanic who saved an engine, lost everything for doing the right thing, and returned not for revenge but to rebuild hope. Hazel grew older surrounded by living examples of forgiveness rather than bitterness. She learned that true strength was not measured by how loudly someone demanded respect but by how gently they offered it to others. Watching her father choose compassion over revenge became the greatest education she could ever receive. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us whether you believe forgiveness is stronger than revenge, or share a moment when someone gave you a second chance that changed your life. Years later, visitors entering Hawthorne Performance Motors noticed a simple bronze plaque near the factory entrance. It did not celebrate a championship, an executive, or a record-breaking race. Instead it carried a quiet reminder that every employee read before beginning the day: never underestimate the hands willing to serve, because they may also be the hands that built your greatest victories. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that kindness is never weakness, humility never goes out of style, and the greatest leaders are those who recognize the value hidden inside ordinary people before life is forced to teach them the lesson the hard way.